I've said in several of my recent videos that I have to give a massive amount of credit to Ben Davison for the job that he's done so far with Tyson Fury, particularly under such difficult circumstances. He not only took a man in Tyson Fury who was grossly overweight, who was living a very unhealthy lifestyle and was not in a good place mentally, and turned him back into a world-class heavyweight in a relatively short space of time. But he did that when he was only 25, going on 26 years old. I believe he's 26 now. Relatively inexperienced, particularly at the highest level. He had a lot of people who doubted him and questioned him and wondered whether he was up to the task, including myself, including Frank Warren, who's come out and admitted that he was unsure about Ben Davison. And if you look at John Fury's interviews prior to the Wilder fight, he seemed to be in doubt about Ben Davison's ability in such a high pressure situation when he's so inexperienced. So for a man just 25, 26 years old to be able to take on such a gigantic, gargantuan task and perform the way that he did in the corner, and in my opinion, he performed very well in Tyson Fury's corner against Deontay Wilder. I think he gave excellent instructions. I know some people disagree, but me personally, that's my view. And he didn't have the full confidence of everybody around him. For example, Freddie Roach appeared to be questioning of Ben Davison's decision-making and his ability as a coach. So amidst all that, all the doubters and all the pressure, such an enormous task for someone relatively inexperienced, for him to hold it together the way that he did and do as good a job as he ended up doing, I have to give him maximum respect for that. Passed his first huge test with flying colors, and he showed tremendous potential as a coach. That's what I have to say. I also, several weeks ago, did a video where I talked about the fact that Ben Davison has gone on record and said that he would like to see Anthony Joshua versus Deontay Wilder next, and that the winner should then face Tyson Fury. I also think that's the best way for the heavyweight division to go right now. So we can put all speculation to bed and find out once and for all who is the true king of the heavyweight division. Get all the belts consolidated by Joshua and Wilder fighting, then the winner takes on Tyson Fury. You can put all the speculation to bed after that. So I agree with Ben Davison on that. However, in his most recent interview here on IFL, I have to disagree, respectfully disagree, with something he said here. Ben Davison, just like Frank Warren and Tyson Fury himself, has now come out and said that in order for Joshua versus Fury to ever happen, it has to be a 50-50 purse split. Dear, oh dear, oh dear. I'm shaking my head. And again, no disrespect, but this is not a reasonable position to take. And I'll explain why. But before I get to the specifics of why Joshua versus Fury cannot be 50-50 right now if it's actually going to happen, I'm going to give you some examples of how the money in boxing is generated and why certain fighters get paid as much as they do. And it's often got not so much to do with their resume in certain cases, not so much to do with how long they've been champion, or in some cases, how many belts they have. What it's got to do with is market value. What determines your worth in terms of your commercial worth as a fighter and how much you're going to get paid and how large a percentage you can realistically demand for a fight, it comes down to your market value. And market value is dictated by how many tickets you sell, how many pay-per-view buys you do, how much international TV revenue is coming in, etc., etc. That is what determines your market value. I'll give you some examples of people who were seen as credible in the eyes of the boxing public. They were seen as, real fighters and they deserve proper money. But they weren't getting as much as other fighters who were not seen as credible. Because like I say, you can have all the belts in the world, you can have all the credibility in the world. If you're not selling those tickets, and if you're not selling those pay-per-views, you ain't going to get paid the big money. And that's just the way it goes. You might think that's unfair. It doesn't matter whether you think it's unfair. The money in boxing comes from the amount of people who want to watch you. It's as simple as that, regardless how many belts you have. Now, some examples. Where are we at here? Yeah. When Marcus Maidana fought Floyd Mayweather the second time, his baseline purse was $3 million. That's how much he got as his baseline. Pay-per-view on top, and he did get an extra 1.5 million for agreeing not to wear his usual gloves. He ended up wearing Power Locks instead of his Everlast MX. But his baseline purse was $3 million. And this is a guy who's been a professional boxer for years and years. He's been a world champion before, so on and so forth. He gets $3 million. But the other year, Mr. Conor McGregor, a man who had never fought in a professional boxing ring in his entire life before, steps in against the very same opponent, Mayweather, and makes a minimum baseline purse of $30 million. So he was guaranteed 10 times as much money as Marcus Maidana, when Marcus Maidana is far more credible. People can cry and scream about that and say it's wrong. It doesn't matter what you think is right and wrong. More people wanted to watch Conor McGregor against Mayweather than Maidana against Mayweather. Whether they were casuals or MMA fans, it's irrelevant. The point being, because far more people wanted to see McGregor than Maidana, McGregor got paid more. His market value was way higher than Maidana. This is how purses in boxing are dictated, by your market value, by how many people are actually willing to pay to watch you. Some other less extreme examples would be Canelo Alvarez when he fought Triple G. For the first fight, Canelo's baseline was $5 million. Triple G's was $3 million. They made a hell of a lot more than that when pay-per-view was added on top. Triple G going into the fight, he was the IBF, WBA, and WBC middleweight champion. Canelo had no belts. No belts. But Canelo was getting more money than Triple G. Triple G had been middleweight champion for how long? He'd had how many defenses? But yet he got less money than Canelo. Because despite all Triple G had achieved, despite being perceived by the majority of the boxing hardcore as a more credible middleweight than Canelo, he was not somebody with a higher market value. And so he agreed, despite being the man with all the belts, the man with the longer middleweight reign, he agreed to take less money. Because he understood his market value was not as high. He can't step to Canelo and say 50-50. He knew he couldn't do that. So he didn't. So he compromised and he took, what was it, like maybe 60-40? Something like that. 65-35 for the first fight. He compromised and said, okay, I'll take that. Beat Canelo. And then my market value will rise and I'll be able to demand more for a rematch, or I'll just be able to earn more going forward even against other opponents. Because I'm going to benefit from the exposure that I'll get fighting Canelo. And he still got good money for the first Canelo fight. It's not like he was earning chicken change, but he wasn't making as much as Canelo. And that's somebody with 3 belts, long title reign, so on and so forth. So for Tyson Fury and his promoter and now his trainer to be stepping up, talking about they want 50-50 for the Anthony Joshua fight, it's just not realistic. Tyson Fury not only doesn't have belts, he's only ever had 2 world title fights. He hasn't sold out Wembley Stadium or the Principality Stadium. He hasn't been making over 20 million pounds a fight like Anthony Joshua. He hasn't been doing any of that. So how can this guy step to the table with Joshua and demand 50-50? It's ridiculous. And for Ben Davison to be saying that it's Joshua who needs to acquiesce and give Fury and Wilder the 50-50 splits, and that it's Joshua who needs to stop being so business-minded. Why doesn't he look at his own fighter and say, well, Fury hasn't earned anywhere near as much as Joshua's earned. Why is he demanding 50-50? He's being too business-minded. Why doesn't he be realistic? Particularly given the fact that Tyson Fury did not get 50-50 for the Deontay Wilder fight. Wilder's only got 1 belt. Wilder doesn't have a resume as good as Joshua's resume. Wilder hasn't made the money that Joshua's made. But yet, Fury was willing to take less than 50-50 against Deontay Wilder. This is from Showtime, right? CBS Sports. Showtime's owned by CBS. This is from their website, and it says here, Wilder's baseline was 4 million. Fury's baseline was 3 million. What was Joshua's baseline for his last fight? Joshua's baseline, according to the Express here in the UK, Joshua's baseline was 20 million pounds. Now, 20 million pounds to dollars, is $25 million. That's his baseline. It says here, Joshua and Povetkin will split 26 million pounds, a figure which is being boosted by pay-per-view sales. Now, to be fair, that sounds a little ambiguous. It's being boosted. Does that mean that the pay-per-view sales are on top? Or does that mean that it wouldn't be as high as 26 million if it weren't for the pay-per-view? I'm not sure which. In any event, it doesn't really matter. Because Joshua, the point is making way more money per fight than Tyson Fury's making. I mean, it's not even close. How can you be demanding 50-50 from a guy who is levels and levels and levels above you on the pay scale? Why isn't Ben Davison saying, well, Fury needs to be more realistic and stop looking at it as a business? If he wants to get the Joshua fight done, then he's going to need to stop demanding 50. Why isn't Ben Davison saying that? Why is he saying that it's Joshua is the one who needs to acquiesce and give people who are earning what? 3-4 times less than him, 50-50? People, what is going on here? And you know, it makes me wonder whether or not Fury's team actually want to fight Anthony Joshua at this point. Because if they really wanted to fight him, would they be talking about 50-50 when they know how unrealistic that is? They know that Fury's market value is nowhere near as high as Joshua's. 50-50 is like a way of pricing yourself out before the negotiations have even begun. Either that, or it's a negotiation tactic where you're thinking, we'll go high and they're going to go low, and we'll meet somewhere in the middle. So if we say 50-50, Joshua's team says, I don't know, 70-30, we might end up with 60-40. If it's a negotiation tactic, and I hope it is, then I can understand it to some extent, but it still concerns me a little bit. In this interview, and the Sun have just summarized the IFL interview really, Ben Davison is talking about how he hasn't received any contact, or Fury's team hasn't received any contact from Joshua's team. Joshua is the one who is holding the free belts. Joshua's the one who's filling out the stadiums and making £20 million or $25 million plus per fight. Why would he need to call you? And he's not doing that. He don't have to fight somebody the British public all know to be making that kind of money. No. I mean, people, it gets even worse. Let's go back to the money Joshua made against Povetkin. Povetkin made £6 million for the Joshua fight. How many people in the UK know Povetkin? Povetkin is not a household name in the UK. I can tell you for a fact that Deontay Wilder is far more well known in the UK than Alexander Povetkin is. So if Joshua can make $25 million fighting somebody who most of the British public have never heard of, imagine how much he could make fighting a Deontay Wilder or a Tyson Fury. Astronomical sums. But yet Fury and Wilder fought each other, and compared to Joshua, they made chicken change. If Tyson Fury wants to talk about 50-50 with Joshua, he needs to prove that his market value is on the same level as Joshua's in the UK. So he needs to go out there and fight whoever he needs to fight, sell out stadiums like Wembley and the Principality, do over 1 million pay-per-view buys on BT Sport or whatever other platform. If he can go and do that, then yeah, damn right, he can realistically step to the table and demand 50-50 for a Joshua fight. Hell yeah, I'd support him all the way on that. But until you've reached that level and proven you can do that, demanding 50-50 is totally absurd. It's completely ridiculous. Someone who is levels and levels above you on the pay scale, how can you demand 50? The mind boggles, but yet, and still Ben Davison is saying it's Joshua who needs to budge and give Fury the 50-50, despite the fact Fury's market value is nowhere near that high. I mean, why you say Joshua needs to stop being so business-minded. Isn't Fury being business-minded by demanding 50-50? This is a guy, Tyson Fury, who repeatedly throughout his career said he don't do it for the money. And yet he's talking about 50-50. Why didn't he talk about 50-50 for the Wilder fight? A much smaller fight against a champion who only had one belt and had a much weaker resume than Joshua. But you weren't demanding 50-50 from him, but you want 50-50 from AJ. It just makes it look like Team Fury don't want the fight. That's what it makes it look like. I can't say definitively that they don't want it, but it makes it look like they don't want it when they're demanding 50-50. If Fury really wants this fight against AJ, and I'm not convinced that he does, he might want it down the line, but in terms of right now, I'm not convinced. I'm not saying he definitely don't. I'm just saying I'm not convinced that he wants the fight right now. If I'm wrong and he does really want it, what Fury needs to do is actually have his team reach out to the cash cow, make them an offer, and Fury should start trolling Anthony Joshua on social media for the fight. That's what he should start doing. That's what I want him to. I want him to start trolling AJ on social media and demanding that AJ step in the ring with him. That's what I'd like to see. Pressure him, and not only will pressuring him give AJ more of an incentive to step in the ring with Fury, but it will also help Fury's market value even more. So that's what I'd like to see Tyson Fury doing, is calling Joshua out constantly and basically launching a campaign to get that fight made. And regardless of what he says in public, behind the scenes, he has to be willing to budge from 50-50. If not getting 50-50 is a deal breaker for Tyson Fury against Joshua right now, then Tyson Fury don't want the fight. It's as simple as that. Because he knows, his whole team knows, that his market value at this point is nowhere near as high as Joshua's market value. It's just not. That's not up for debate. These are facts. So let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Is Tyson Fury trying to price himself out of an Anthony Joshua fight right now? Is that what he's doing? You know, there were some people who accused Canelo of pricing himself out of the Golovkin fight first time around. You remember those negotiations for the first Canelo-Golovkin fight were protracted. They were long and drawn out. But all the people who had accused Canelo of pricing himself out were ultimately proved wrong because he took the fight. And personally, I remember being slightly surprised that he took it because he'd avoided the fight for so long, but he eventually took it. And that bout of negotiations proved to be real negotiations. Canelo wasn't pricing himself out. He was just making sure the fact that he was the A side was represented in the purse split. And so the fight got made because Golovkin wasn't silly about it and did concede that despite being the one with all the belts and being perceived as the more credible middleweight, Golovkin felt like, well, Canelo is the one who makes more money. So I'm going to have to concede and say, you know what? Yeah, I'll take the short end of the stick. Still make a nice sum of money, but not as much as Canelo's going to make. He conceded. He knew that that was the only way the fight was going to happen based upon their respective market values. Tyson Fury needs to do something similar. And Tyson Fury, by the way, is in nowhere near as strong a position as Golovkin was in against Canelo at a negotiating table. Nowhere near as strong a position. Tyson Fury don't have one belt. Tyson Fury's only had 2 world title fights in his whole career, a win and a draw. Golovkin had 3 belts and he'd been in how many world title fights? Like 10 or whatever it was. He'd been in loads of world title fights, probably over 10. When was his first world title fight? God, Kasim Umar, Tapia, Milton Nunes. So the Milton Nunes fight back in 2010 was Golovkin's first world title fight. So he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 world title fights going into the Canelo fight. 19 world title fights with 3 world title belts. And yet he still didn't demand 50-50. Or at least 50-50 wasn't a deal breaker. I don't know if at any point in the negotiations, Golovkin's team tried to get 50-50 or asked for 50-50. Maybe they did. But in the end, they settled for far less than 50-50. Despite the fact that Golovkin was so accomplished and had all the belts and 19 world title fights and all this other stuff. And here's Tyson Fury with 2 world title fights, a win and a draw, no belts, talking about 50-50 against Joshua. It's absurd. Does he really want to fight at all? When he's not being realistic? And you can call AJ greedy, you can call Eddie Hearn greedy. Maybe they are greedy. You know, I've never negotiated with them. I don't know how hard a bargain they drive. Maybe they're greedy. I don't know. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Anthony Joshua and Eddie Hearn in general are not greedy people. I can't sit here and tell you that. I don't know them personally. But what I do know is that in boxing, purses, 99.9% of the time, not always, there are always some weird exceptions, but 99.9% of the time, purses in boxing are dictated by a fighter's market value. How many tickets they sell, how many pay-per-views they sell, how much money their name and their events generate. That's what fighters' purses are dictated by. Nobody with an ounce of common sense, with a single working, functioning brain cell in their head, could sit there with a straight face and say Tyson Fury's market value is anywhere near as high as Anthony Joshua's market value. In which case, why Ben Davison? Again, I give you the most amount of credit for proving what you proved as a boxing coach. Most amount of credit. I doubted you. You know, many other people doubted you. Frank Warren was unsure about you. I give you the most amount of credit for doing what you've done at such a young age, under all the pressure. But realistically, Ben Davison, how can you sit there and say that it's AJ who's supposed to acquiesce and not think about business and give these guys 50-50, why are you not saying that to your own fighter? Tyson Fury, the man who says he ain't in it for the money. But yet he signed with Frank Warren, and on Twitter he said it's because Frank Warren was paying him the most money. Oh, I thought he didn't care about money. Why are you not speaking to your own fighter, Tyson Fury, and say, listen, it's not realistic to be asking 50-50 for the Joshua fight. Like, lower it a bit. You know? Unless, as I say, it's a negotiation tactic. And I hope it is. But if it is, reach out to Joshua's team, start trolling Joshua on social media, launch a campaign to get that fight made. But I don't see that. I don't really see any push from Team Fury to get the Joshua fight done. I've seen no push for it at all. And I was concerned, if you remember in the run-up to Wilder versus Fury, I was concerned that Fury might not be so keen on fighting Joshua regardless of the result of the Wilder fight. I was concerned because I'd never really seen Fury push for the Joshua fight before. And to be fair, Joshua's team has never really pushed that hard for the Fury fight, although obviously Eddie Hearn did try to sign Fury with a view to making the Joshua fight after a couple bouts. So they made some kind of effort, but I don't want to really say they pushed for the Fury fight. But again, AJ is making $25 million a fight, fighting people the British public had never heard of. So you can understand why in that position, he doesn't really feel like he needs to push to fight Tyson Fury, who doesn't even have any belts. You can understand that position. But for Fury, you got no belts. You're earning just a fraction of what Joshua's earning per fight. And you want Joshua's position. Let's be real. Fury wants to be the one who is filling out stadiums in the UK, 70 and 80,000 people. Fury wants to be in that position. He wants to be the one who's got all the belts again. I know he says he don't care about belts. But when you're undisputed champion, it's there in the name. There's no dispute. So he definitely wants to be, even if you disregard what I said about belts, he wants to be in Joshua's position with regards to filling out stadiums, having a massive amount of the UK public behind him. That's where Fury wants to be. He wants to be the top dog in world boxing officially, but certainly in the UK domestically. He feels like he deserves to have Joshua's spot. And if that's the case, go snatch the crown. Call the man out. Have Warren reach out to Hearn, make them an offer. Say you're interested in the fight. Start trolling Joshua on social media. Put pressure on him to sign on a dotted line. And if you're serious, you need to be willing to budge way off that 50-50. But hey, if you're not serious, you're going to keep talking about 50-50. You're not going to make them no offers. You're not going to make any real effort to get the fight done. You're just going to go around saying Joshua was a coward when you're not really making any effort to fight him yourself. So we'll see what Tyson Fury and his team actually end up doing. Whether if they're serious, the 50-50, ridiculous. And they know that if they're serious. But if they're not serious, then the 50-50 is a way of pricing themselves out and keeping up appearances for the public. So, yeah, let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. It's happening, I'm out. Join me on Patreon. I upload a minimum of 2 podcasts every single week, covering a wide variety of controversial topics, as well as live stream Q&A sessions. Take a look on screen right now at some of the podcasts I've produced so far. For just $3 a month, the equivalent of about £2 a month, you get access to all my new podcasts and my entire back catalogue of past podcasts, including my popular Confessions of a Nightclub Bouncer series. You can listen on your computer or on your smartphone or tablet by downloading the Patreon app from the Google Play Store or the App Store for free. The Patreon app also allows you to download each podcast in MP3. For less than the price of a cup of coffee, you get access to dozens of hours of exclusive content. It's easy to sign up, there's no contract, and you can cancel at any time. So come and join our community of free and critical thinkers by signing up with me here on Patreon today.